Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, it is upon us. Week 1 of the National Football League regular season. Washington Commanders will be taking on the New York Football Giants at home in Week 1 in a little bit of NFC East family business. We'll get to that a little bit later on as we'll take our first look at that matchup on Sunday. However, a little bit of news to talk about from the Commanders' standpoint. They released their initial depth charts, their official depth chart to start off the 2025-2026 campaign. And honestly, there wasn't a ton there that really, moved the needle necessarily. They had Bill as the number 4 running back. I don't think any of us believe that he's behind C-Rod and Jeremy McNichols. I do, and I've said this already, I do believe Austin Ekeler will be the first running back on the field when they take the field on Sunday afternoon for their first possession against the Giants. I've said that numerous times. Ekeler is going to be the guy that's out there, but I still expect Bill to get a good workload in that game. Now, again, they're going to go with the hot hand. This is a running back by committee, right? This is a running back by committee. So I expect them to go with whomever is hot, and there may be opportunities for some of these guys, C-Rod, and, there's been this conversation. I don't think there's really much to it, but there's a conversation that one of these running backs may be inactive Week 1. I don't believe that. If you're going to go with a running back by committee, you probably need to have all 4 of them, active. They all do different things. They play special teams, have the ability to, at least in the case of Ekeler. I don't know if they're going to put him back there. That's something else that was a part of the depth chart, where they had Deebo Samuel as the primary kick returner. And again, I don't really know if that's something that we can necessarily expect them to execute every week. Maybe Week 1 you throw Deebo back there. Maybe in a big spot you throw Deebo back there. But I don't know if that's something you want him doing every single week because of how big of a part of the offense he is. But I do expect to see him back there from time to time. And I wouldn't be shocked to see him out there to kick off the season, right? But I think you're going to see Luke McCaffrey, who's also designated as a starter, as a kickoff return man back there. And I think you may see some Jeremy McNichol. I think you may see some Noah Igbenogany. They've tried a bunch of guys back there, and I wouldn't be shocked if you saw Bill back there. They are going to get the most out of these players, which is why I don't think you're going to see any of the running backs inactive. Another big thing, however, was that Josh Connolly Jr., in fact, was the starter at right tackle, which I assumed was going to be the case all along. They had something also interesting on the depth chart, which was Nick Allegretti as a starter or Andrew Wiley. I would really like to see Wiley get in there, but guess what? Wiley is also your primary swing tackle. You don't want him out there at guard if you can afford not to, and you can afford not to. And that's why I think it's still going to be Nick Allegretti as the starting right guard. He's been working there pretty much the entire summer. I don't see them disrupting that now, but I wouldn't be shocked if they don't love what they see out of Allegretti in Week 1. This is a really good Giants front that they're going to go up against. And if they don't love what they see, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Andrew Wiley get in there next week as your starting right guard until Sam Cosmi is healthy. And so that's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do there. But ultimately, I think your starting lineup across from left to right is going to be Laramie Tunsil at left guard, tackle, Brandon Coleman, Tyler Biadasz, Nick Allegretti, and the rookie first-round pick, Josh Connolly Jr. I think that's your starting 5 up front. And then I think everything else is kind of self-explanatory. Nothing else really changed. We knew what the defensive line starting group looked like. We knew what the linebacking core looks like. We knew what the secondary looked like in terms of starters there. So everything else is kind of status quo. Those were the only things that kind of jumped out, things that we didn't have resolution to necessarily. Offensive line, they're going to start Josh Connolly at right tackle. I think Allegretti's going to start next to him. That's the only real domino that hasn't fallen yet. But I think we got our answer with Allegretti there. I think they still want to have Andrew Wiley as that first guy off the bench if need be. And I think he is on a short leash, however, is Nick Allegretti. If he doesn't play well in week one, and it may be in game, they may say, hey, Wiley, you get out there, right? But if he doesn't play well, if they're not up, if he's not playing up to par, I could see them inserting Andrew Wiley, even in game this week, but if not next week. But I think Allegretti's going to do just fine. I have no doubts that he can go out there and get the job done. And so I think he's going to be the guy that's going to be starting at right guard the entire duration while Sam Cosmi's on the mend. Meanwhile, Kendrick Bourne had a visit with the 49ers on Monday, had a visit with the Commanders on Tuesday, left both organizations without a deal. And so now the question becomes, as he mulls over his decisions and his options, what is he going to do? How badly do the Commanders need a guy like Kendrick Bourne? I talked about that on my Bleacher Report today for the quick hit. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, go to your Bleacher Report app, click on the Washington Commanders. You should already be subscribed to me on Bleacher Report. If not, go over there, click on the Washington Commanders, and I'll be one of the first things that pops up. And I'm talking about Kendrick Bourne and whether the Commanders need to add a veteran like Bourne to their squad. And I'll just say this. If we're healthy, we'll be fine, right? But you can't assume health for an 18-game regular season and 4 more games in the postseason, 3 more games, depending on whether you got the 1 seed or not, whatever the case may be. You can't, let's just say a 22-game season, because that's the maximum amount of games you can play. You can't assume health for a 22-game season, all right? And with guys like Noah Brown in particular who have dealt with injuries, the man is on the injury report, which we will take a look at here in a second. For a guy that has been injury prone throughout his career, you just can't assume you're going to get 22 games out of Noah Brown, right? He's never played a full NFL season in his entire career. So you have to know that you're going to, at some point, have to tap into your depth. I think we feel a lot better about Jalen Lane after seeing what he was able to do against Cincinnati in the second preseason game. But that's not enough for me as a fan to feel comfortable not bringing in some sort of veteran. That's why they had all those veterans in camp. That's why they brought a KJ Osborne in here. That's why they brought a Michael Gallup in here. That's why I was a Michael Strawn in here. And none of those guys performed at the level that they were hoping. And so none of them are here. And so Chris Moore definitely is not a guy I want to see pulled up off the practice squad. He can kick rocks. I don't even like the fact that he's here and that he's an option. If they want good work from him in practice on the practice squad, great. I have no issues with that. If this guy has to see the field in any capacity, I don't even care if it's on special teams, I have a problem with that, which is why I feel like they have to add a veteran wide receiver to this mix, and that's why we are all infatuated with the idea of Kendrick Bourne being here. We'll see what he decides to do. He's going to have options. I can get it from his standpoint because he probably wants to go somewhere where he's going to be given an opportunity to play, which is why he wanted to leave New England. He wants to be able to play and know he's going to have a chance to play. If our 3 guys in front of him are healthy, there's not a lot of space and opportunity for Kendrick Bourne. And you know our general manager is a stickler for, here's what we think you're worth. We're not going a cent more over what we think your value is on a 1-year contract. So, again, we'll see what happens with Kendrick Bourne and what he decides. But I think that whole situation of them even being interested, I think it raises a question of, are they truly interested in adding a veteran wide receiver, or were they just interested in the idea of adding Kendrick Bourne? That's where I am with that whole process. Because maybe it won't be Kendrick Bourne, maybe it'll be some other NFL veteran wide receiver, right? But there aren't a lot out there. Obviously, if there were, they would have been, swimming in those pools. There just weren't a lot of guys that you were interested in that were released this year from NFL rosters. So we'll see what they decide to do, right? As we move on to in other news, where we heard from our head coach, Dan Quinn. It's Wednesday. You know how this goes, right? So we hear from the head coach and the starting quarterback. Tomorrow, we'll more likely than not get the 2 coordinators, which I'm always all about. And then Friday, we'll get Dan Quinn one final time. So again, we'll get into our regular season flow and get back to business as usual. We heard from the head coach. We heard from the starting quarterback today, Jaden Daniels, talk about what was said by both of those gentlemen. Before we do that, though, as always, we got to check on the injury report for both squads heading into Sunday's contest. And we start with the good guys, as always. So this is a little bit more than what I wanted to see for a week one contest, right? You want to come out of the gates relatively healthy, which we are. Like, I'm not really concerned about any guy on this list. Zach Ertz, as you can see, veteran rest day. This is what he gets on Wednesdays throughout the season. We saw that last year. So no concerns there. He's really not a part of this injury report, if we're being honest. So it's really just a 4-guy list. Dorrance Armstrong with a knee. Not really happy to see him here in week one, right? And this could just be some maintenance things that they're doing, limited participant. But I don't want to see Dorrance on this thing in week one, right? We don't have a bye until week 12. So I really don't want to see Dorrance Armstrong on a week one injury report, right? Noah Brown, we knew he was going to be here, right? This is the only guy that him and maybe Mariota were the only two that I was like, okay, if they're on the injury report, cool. I still expect them to play. Noah Brown, limited in practice with the knee. We all saw him running around prior to the third preseason game versus Baltimore. I think we all feel comfortable that he's going to be ready to rock and roll come Sunday. So I'm not really too concerned. Had we not seen those clips, had we not been privy to the fact that he's out here moving around really well, we might have been a little bit more concerned, being that he hasn't really practiced the entire summer and hasn't performed in any of the preseason games. Matt Gay, illness. Again, that seems to be very minor. You don't know the severity of the illness, obviously, but I mean, look, just be ready to kick on Sunday. The last time we were at home against these Giants, it took 7 field goals to beat them in the game. So we're going to need Matt Gay, obviously. Hopefully we don't find ourselves in a similar position. Let's score some touchdowns. Let's put these boys away. Let's not have to rely on Matt Gay. You see what I just did there? Bars. And then Marcus Mariota, Achilles. We knew about the situation all summer. He's fine, full participant. Same with Matt Gay, full participant. Not really concerned about this injury report. I shouldn't be in week one, but there's a little bit more names up here than I was hoping to see. But again, 2 full participants, Zach Ertz, Wednesday, vet rest day. Really, it's 2 guys, Dorrance Armstrong, Noah Brown. Both were limited with knee injuries or knee situations, we'll call it. I don't even call them injuries. Knee situations, I think both of them are going to be fine. And so I feel good about this injury report, and so should you. As we go to the ops in this scenario, and this has got one guy. This is what I expect a week one injury report to look like if you've done it right throughout the summer, right? If you've stayed relatively healthy and you've taken care of your veterans and you haven't pushed guys past their limits, this is what it's supposed to look like. Not that saying that we did, right? Obviously, our situation and circumstances are different, and all teams are for that matter. But just one guy. It's a big one. Their left tackle, Andrew Thomas, with a foot injury, limited. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt as to whether he would play in this game or not. A lot of people thought he missed this game. There's still a chance he can play. And until he's out, I'm just going to assume that he is going to play. But the prevailing thought with Andrew Thomas this entire time is that he was going to miss this game, right? Week one. But I'm going to assume he's going to play in this game until he's not playing. But if he can't go, that's a big deal for a Giants offensive line that already isn't that good to begin with. And we know Russell Wilson at this juncture of his career, not a guy that's going to run around very much. We saw him last year and we sacked him about 4 or 5 times in that game against the Steelers. So we know he's not running around anywhere. If Andrew Thomas isn't out there, they're already a compromised offensive line as is when they're fully healthy. The best guy that they got not injured or not able to play could be very beneficial to the Commanders on Sunday. So this is definitely worth keeping an eye on. But let's just assume that he's going to play in this game until he doesn't. And if we get some great news for us, right? We don't turn down any gifts. If you're in the giving spirit and you want to give us an opportunity to have a leg up, we'll take it. We're not rooting for this necessarily, although I am. I'll take it. I don't root for injuries. But if you're already injured and you're already compromised, hey, why not, right? So we'll see what happens with Andrew Thomas. So let's get to the pressers from today. And we heard from both DQ and Jaden. We'll start with the head coach, Dan Quinn. And I thought he had an excellent press conference today. You know, sometimes these become monotonous because every day in training camp we heard from this man. So the questions became redundant. You know, he gave repetitive answers because the questions were repetitive and it felt like they had run out of things to talk about. Then they started asking about Terry a bunch. So they became press conferences that I didn't necessarily look forward to, but I'm not turning it down, right? I'm going to watch. This was great. This felt like a regular season press conference. We're back. We're so back, guys and gals. We're so back. All right. So, um, forging an identity. He started off his press conference talking about forging an identity and how important that is. He talked about, getting off to a fast start, how, the environment that they've created. You don't create a full-blown culture in 1 year, right? And so they have to build off of what they did last year, which is such a true statement. Like, so many people, and we're going to talk about that later on in the week. So many people are writing this team off. Don't think we're going to be successful this year. And I get it, but I don't at the same time. We're going to talk about that later on in the week. But he talked about forging an identity and how important that is and how it starts in the building with them. And I love it, right? He then talked about Jaden's year 2 approach, which he's talked about numerous times, but he just said he doesn't worry about Jayden because he knows the work that Jayden puts in. He knows the type of leader he is. He knows the kind of player that this man is, but more importantly, the student of the game, the tireless work ethic, a guy that wants to win, the competitor that he is. He used the word fearless. Jayden did as well. When talking about Kobe Bryant, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So he said, look, year 2, mentally, he's as locked in and as focused as you can be for a year 2 player. He feels really good about Jayden, as we all do, right? He talked about the running back room versatility and how important it is. That's why they kept 4. He later on talked about Austin Eckler and the versatility of the room. Again, we can kind of combine those two questions and answers. He basically said that all 4 of these running backs bring something different to the table, which they do. He also really hammered home the point that they all add special teams value in some way, shape, or form. I don't think Eck is going to end up on special teams this year unless it's out of pure necessity. Let's say Bill, is dominant as a running back and they really like what Chris Rodriguez has done behind him. And so X other touches have been minimized just to him catching it out of the backfield and the occasional handoff. Maybe we can utilize Eck as a return man again. He was an all-pro last year, but right now he's such a huge part of what we're going to do offensively because they don't know. And DQ said, we're in the process of finding out exactly what we have. We think we know, but we don't have any idea. We haven't played in games yet. We haven't game planned to utilize these guys. So we're going to find out what these guys are, how they're best utilized. And once we're able to figure that out, then we'll kind of better to be able to define roles. But right now, we're just going to go in. We got a committee. We love these guys. We love what they're capable of. And we think their versatility is going to really help us out. He talked about the injury report guys. And really, these guys weren't on the injury report. He talked about Brandon Coleman. He talked about Terry McLaurin and briefly Noah Brown. But he said Terry and BC in particular were phenomenal in practice today. They look good. They're taking full team reps. There are no hindrance to those two at all. Those guys are full go. As you can see, we looked at the injury report. Neither of them were present. So he feels really good about those guys getting in there. And I can't wait to see what it all looks like when it's all said and done. We saw Brandon Coleman in the final preseason game against the Ravens, but he was surrounded by a bunch of funny lookings. We haven't seen him out there with the ones. I'm excited to see him at right guard next to Laramie Tunzel, next to Tyler Biadasz. I can't wait till we get this whole group with Cosme back at right guard. Oh, man, this offensive line, if Josh Conley Jr. is what we think he can be, this offensive line has the potential to be a top 7 group, not top 10, top 7 group in the entire National Football League. He talked about the facility upgrades and the people inside the building. And I thought this was a great answer. This is such a DQ answer, right? He said, over the summer and throughout the spring, there were being, all these improvements to the building were being done. And it was kind of an sort of a, what's the word I'm looking for here? It was sort of an inconvenience. That's the word I was looking for. For the people inside the building, you got to move around here. You got to do this. You can't use this facility. You can't use this part of the building right now. It's under construction. But he said it's all worth it after you see the end result. Obviously, gave a lot of credit to Josh Harris and company for opening up the wallet, spending the money that it took to upgrade the facility, to accommodate the players. He said they got, all kind of recovery type of contraptions and different things that they can use. And he's like, This is how you invest in your players. This is how you invest in your organization. And he couldn't thank him enough. But he said, you know what? When they were going through all of those changes throughout the building, he said, you know what makes the building the building? It's the people. I said, that's such a DQ answer. He's so right. He's like, we could have been doing this shit out of a tent. And as long as you got good people, he said this in his introductory press conference, and I think it holds true to this day. And this is the perfect way to use this. You know, as long as you doing hard shit with good people, it doesn't matter where you're doing it at, right? As long as you got those good people around you, you're going to be able to get shit done. And that's basically what he said. It's the people that make the building. All that nice, fancy bells and whistles stuff that they've added is great. We want those things, trust me. But you want those accommodations, but at the end of the day, for the players as well, right? But at the end of the day, it's the people inside the building that make it what it is. He talked about what he's looking for through the first quarter of the season. And I thought this was a great, dialogue from him. He talked about play style, kick coverage. Obviously, it was not up to speed and up to par in the summertime. So he's going to see this group really go after it, balls to the wall once the season starts. Tackling, which, got better as the preseason wore on, but it was awful in week 1 versus the Patriots. Better against Cincinnati, and he thought it was really good against Baltimore in the final preseason game. And then he said, into half situations, into game situations, like winning time moments, we've got to really be sharp in those moments. He said, we want to see those things really start to take shape in the first quarter of the season so that we move forward and we get better. He always talks about the week 1 version of this team shouldn't be able to beat the week 6 version, shouldn't be able to beat the week 10 version, shouldn't be able to beat the week, 16 version of this team. You get better as the season wears on. And he said this first quarter, they want to iron out a number of things while, being at their best and continuing to put wins on the board. He talked about Mamba time. This is my favorite part of the press conference because this was DQ pulling the curtains back a little bit. And he does this from time to time, but as a coach, you don't really want to pull the curtain back too often. Ron Rivera just had the curtains open. You just saw everything in our house. You got to keep the blinds closed. You got to keep the curtains closed sometimes, right? But sometimes it's okay to open up, let a little bit of sunshine in, right? Let a bit of light in. Let us in a little bit. This was him doing that. He was asked specifically about Mamba time, and I thought we were about to get some Kobe Bryant shit, right? No, he explained to us what Mamba time actually meant. This was fascinating shit. So he basically said Mamba time is when you're down multiple scores late in the game. He said you don't want to be in these situations, first of all, but they happen. And he said Mamba time is when you got to have it. You're down multiple scores. You got to go down. You got to score in a certain amount of time, probably kick a field goal, kick off, use your timeouts on defense, get the ball back so that you have a chance to score and avoid needing an onside kick because the percentage of recovering one of those is so low. And he gave an example of the Baltimore game. I really more so was thinking the Dallas game last year, right? That was Mamba time for us. The Ravens game was Mamba time, but the defense didn't get the stop, right? The Steelers game was Mamba time for us, but the defense didn't get the stop, right? They had the offsides penalty in the Steelers game. The defense didn't get the stop. They gave up the big run to Derrick Henry and then the big run to Lamar Jackson to put the game away, right? So they didn't get the stop to give us the ball back. But in the Dallas game, they executed Mamba time perfectly, right? We were down multiple scores. We went down. We scored a touchdown. We kicked the ball off. He ran it back for a touchdown. And what did we do? We got the football back. We went down the field. We raced down the field, and we got a field goal. We kicked it off. We used our timeouts. We got the ball back. You get the 86-yard touchdown. Should have been going to overtime. I would have gone for 2, but that's not here. That's nor here nor there. The bottom line is that was Mamba time, and we executed it to perfection, right? You're down multiple scores. He said 9 in the press conference, and you need 2 scores, and you want to avoid needing an onside kick. And he said, you got to execute in those moments. They practiced that. This is why we saw a very prepared team in those situations. The Hail Mary. The Bears clearly weren't prepared by moving their guys back and giving us a free 12 yards to make that Hail Mary even possible. They weren't prepared. We were. We took advantage of that, right? Instead of chucking it deep on that play, we took the free yards, got out of bounds, and then executed the Hail Mary. We executed against Dallas. We executed against the Steelers. They were going to punt that football. They were going to punt that football if Johnny Newton doesn't jump off sides. So I love the Mamba time explanation, and he's right, you don't want to be in those situations, but he said once upon a time, early in his career when he was with the Atlanta Falcons as the head coach, he didn't want to talk about Mamba time. He didn't want to talk about those situations. He didn't want to talk about losing in a game because in his mind, I don't want to put that in the mind of my players. He's like, man, F that. These situations are going to come up, bro. You're not going to be winning in every single game, and we got to lean into that. And when we are down, we got to be ready to execute. I love DQ, man. He talked about the Giants D-line. He said it's a really good group. They got some horses up front. We all know the problems they pose. And so he said, this is a great challenge in week 1, and they're going to see how we handle it, right? He talked about building off of last season. This was another great dialogue from DQ. And he talked about, picking up from that loss against Philadelphia. And he was like, that stung. And he said, you don't want to lose the fire you have from that loss, but at the same time, you got to move forward, right? But you learn lessons, and he talked about, learning the lessons from that loss. You saw how they went and reacted to that by going out in free agency and bolstering the front, upgrading the offensive line. Like that loss against Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game sounded off bells and whistles for them. The alarm was sounded that day, and you see the end result, right? They went out and got better at run after catch because against Philadelphia, you're going to have to run after the catch. So they went and got Debo. You got to be able to protect. So they went and got Larry Tunsil. You got to be better up front. So they went out and fortified the defensive line. And he talked about, growing as a staff, growing as a team, but not being satisfied with what you did last year and continuing to build off of. Like, a lot of people keep trying to compare this season to last year. And DQ's like, we don't want to replicate what we did last year. We want to build off of that. We want to grow. Like, a lot of people like, man, can the Commanders replicate? I don't want to replicate because that means our journey ends in the NFC Championship game. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying for us to get back to the postseason again and see if we can't do damage once again. I'm trying to see this team establish themselves as a triple P. That's what this season is about, right? Establishing this organization as a triple P moving forward. And DQ pretty much echoed those sentiments. Eck and the committee. He talked about Eck and, Eck wanted to come here because he didn't want to be a bell cow, which is what he was his last year in Los Angeles with the Chargers. He wants to be a part of a committee. That's how he's going to be best utilized at this stage of his career. And DQ kind of, said, yeah, no, we love every single guy in our running back room. Eck has a specific role. Everybody in that room has a specific role. And we think we have a really good group. He talked about what makes week 1 special. Thought that was another one. And he's just like, it's the beginning of the journey. And he talks about the journey so often. Talks about base camp and, this is the beginning of the fight together. And every week it's a new fight. And, we heard the quote last year. It's up on the wall inside the facility. The most important fight is the one that we're in. And that kind of ties into the last two, conversations surrounding DQ and what he had to say. What determines a successful season? That's the question I've been asking every and anybody that has anything to do with this team. What's a successful season in your mind? What does that look like? How do you define that this year? I defined it for you guys the other night, right? For me, what it looks like. And I've said this multiple times, but DQ said looking sharp and executing in week 1 and getting the job done in week 1. That's all I can think about. That's the answer I want to hear from my head coach. Let us, as fans, let the media, let the talking heads talk about defining a successful season. Let us look into the future and talk about what we will be excited about, what we will be disappointed about. Let us do all of that. As a coach, you don't have the bandwidth to talk about what it looks like 18 weeks from now, what it looks like 22 weeks from now. You don't have the bandwidth to even talk about what it looks like 3 weeks from now. You got a opponent on Sunday, and then you got a quick turnaround Thursday night football on the road at the Green Bay Packers. You don't have time to think about what a successful season looks like. How about let's just get it done this week? Love the answer from DQ, because that's what it's about. 1 week at a time. And then he took that and he said, that was his final answer. We got to take things one at a time. He said, I know it sounds cliche, but as a coach, you have to instill that in your players that we can't overlook an opponent. We can't look past this week. We got to be present today. You got to be present the next day. You got to be in the meeting rooms, present, You have to prepare to be ready for the upcoming opponent. And then when that opponent is done, you move on to the next one. And so you have to be one game at a time. And as fans, a lot of fans like looking ahead. I always tell y'all every week, don't talk to me about Green Bay right now. I don't have anything to say to you about Green Bay. I just want to talk about the Giants. Y'all know how I am during the season. All right. And next week it'll be, hey, quick turnaround. I don't want to hear nothing else about, the upcoming opponent, the Raiders the following week. Just talk to me about Green Bay. And after that game's done, then we can have all the conversations about the Raiders that you want. But I'm in that same mindset every year. You guys know how I operate. So that was DQ. I thought it was an excellent press conference for the first one. Jaden, he had his press conference today. He talked about the difference between year one and year two, and he said, I know what to expect now. I had no ideas what I was walking into year one last year in my first start. Now I know how to prepare. I know what I'm getting myself into. I know when to go out on the field for pregame warmup. I know what time to get to the building, in preparation for the game. Like, there's all these things that I didn't know last year. Now I'm very comfortable in all of that. He talked about the impact that Terry and Noah can have on this offense, and he's like, I guess y'all just going to find out, on Sunday, right? He's very confident that they're going to be really good on Sunday. You could tell. External expectations, and this was a constant theme of his press conference, and a lot of laughing went on during these conversations. You can tell he's a lot more comfortable at the podium too. Still doesn't want to do it, you can tell, right? But he's a lot more comfortable, a lot more smiling, a lot more joking, etc. He said, look, I don't watch ESPN or none of that stuff. So, coaches don't have to worry about me bringing that stuff into the building. That's just not me. Then John Combs like, well, hey, appreciate the shout out for ESPN, right? So that caused a little bit of laughter amongst the entire room. Then he was asked about the Giants and what they pose. And then, he talked about getting into a routine. And I just talked about that, like when to show up at the facility for a game day, when to go out on the field to get your warm up and your pregame warm up in and all of that stuff. And he said, look, the Giants are really good defensively. We know what their front is. We know they fly around. They're going to be fast. Everybody's going to be, juiced up, gassed up. It's week one, etc. So he's like, yeah, we're going to be ready. But we know that's a really good group that we're going to be playing against on Sunday. Then he talked about Kobe's impact on him. And you could tell that Kobe Bryant, and this is not the first time he or Bobby Wagner have spoken about the impact of Kobe Bean Bryant and what his life on and off the court, how it impacted them. And he talked about, the Mamba mentality, basically, without actually saying it. And you can see a lot of what Kobe did to prepare to be one of the greatest athletes we've seen in the 21st century. We can tell that a lot of that he has put into his game, right? The getting up early in the morning. He talked about Kobe not wanting to associate himself with someone else who wasn't working as hard as he was or wasn't willing to put in the work. You could tell about his mentality. He talked about Kobe not being afraid of the moment because he over-prepared. He was so prepared when it was time for the final shot, that there was no flinch in Kobe. And he's like, there's no flinch in me. There's no nervousness for me because I do this. I prepare. I put myself in the position that when those moments arise, I'm ready. And so he talked about, Kobe just being different. Like, who's tearing their Achilles, rupturing their Achilles and shooting 2 free throws and then walking off the court with a ruptured Achilles? He was different. And I strive to be different, right? So he talked about the impact that Kobe had on him. And you can tell it's a profound impact. He talked about the veteran leadership. He was asked what was so different about this year, and he said the veteran leadership. They added more veterans to the locker room. You can feel their presence. Jaden himself now, albeit year two, him and Mikey, they conduct themselves like 6-7 year veterans. You couple that with the addition of Debo and Laramie and Jonathan Jones and Dietrich Wise and some of the other veterans that they've brought in here, in addition to the guys that were here last year that were veterans like Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz, and Bobby Wagner. And you look at this group and you feel like, man, this is a really veteran-laden team. Some people will call us old. We call it a veteran-laden team that's ready to win right now. And I think they've put a lot of pieces in place to get that done. And I think Jaden feels that, and he pretty much communicated that. He talked about the conversation he had with Josh Connolly Jr. going into his first career NFL start and kind of giving him a little bit of insight as to what he should expect in his first career game. And I didn't know if Jaden was going to open up as much as he did, but he was like, I basically told him, they're going to come after you, bro. Laramie's on the other side. You a rookie in your first career NFL start. They got you circled and they want to test you. They want to see what you about. So just know they coming after you, bruh. You got to be ready. You put in the work and you got to be ready to go out there because they coming after you. And he said, Josh Conley doesn't say a lot. He doesn't smile a lot. He said, so he's trying to get him to smile a little bit more. You can tell Jaden's got a personality where he's upbeat, bubbly, always trying to get other people laughing and joking. So he's like, I'm trying to get him to lose. Now, I know he's having fun, but I want to see it on his face. So, I thought that was a really good, dialogue from Jaden there in talking to one of his teammates. And that's the leadership that they've talked about, they've seen from Jaden this year. Terry's impact on the offense. And he's like, you can't replicate what Terry means to this team on and off the field. It's so good to have him back. And it's the thing that he, pretty much said last week when he talked about Terry being back. Like, he changes everything. And it's just so good to have him back out on the field. He talked about the second year mentality. So I love that they brought certain things to his doorstep to see how he would react. And they brought the whole sophomore slump thing to his doorstep, laid it down right on his doorstep, rang the doorbell, and ran behind a tree to see how he was going to react to it. And he was like, look, that outside noise is for everybody else to enjoy. I know what I'm capable of. And I love the fact that it was even preference with, hey, they want to talk about sophomore slump, but hey, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in year 2 as a starter both won MVP. What do you think you can do in year 2? Is MVP something that you set as a goal for yourself? Because that's what we all talking about here as fans. And he's like, look, man, I'm going to just go out and try to be the best version of Jayden Daniels. That's all I'm looking to do. And if we win games, all the rest of that stuff will take care of itself. Facts. Like, this is why you got to love this dude, because he's the humble king for a reason. He doesn't bite. He doesn't take the bait, right? They throw the bait out there all the time. He could be tooting his own horn, patting his own back. We've seen quarterbacks do that here before, but he doesn't take the bait. He's like, yo, if we get it done as a team, all of those individual accolades will take care of themselves. I just want to be the best version of Jayden Daniels that I can be and let the chips fall where they may. Good answer. Good answer. Good answer. That's the number one answer on the board. Show me. Be the best version of myself. Bing! Number one answer, right? This is why I love this guy. He talked about the running back room. He said that they have versatility. They all play hard. They all prepare well. They are looking forward to seeing what the running back room can do for them this season. And then he talked about the identity of the team. And this was a great answer. It was a funny answer because he said, what did DQ say? DQ had his press conference before Jaden had his earlier before practice, and Jaden had his after practice. And Jaden said, what did DQ say? Whatever DQ said is our identity. That's our identity. We follow him. So whatever he said, and everybody started laughing. I started laughing. I'm like, again, good answer, good answer. So that was Jaden. It was a really good press conference from Jaden and from DQ, to be honest with you. Enjoyed both of them as we take our first look at the New York Football Giants. We already know what we're getting ourselves into. This is family business. There's been a lot of trash talk between the two fan bases leading up to this game. The Giants fans expect to win this game. Like, they think they're coming into Washington. And I love the fact that they really thought that they were better than us last year in the first game. And if they had their kicker, they would have won the game. Who knows how the game would have went had they had their kicker, right? All I know is they had opportunities. They didn't get it done. We had opportunities to blow them out. We didn't get it done, right? Like, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that the game with Austin Eckler running a kickback for a touchdown and it got called back due to a penalty that we thought was phantom? Then we had the 18 penalties in the red zone and we had to settle for all the field goals. Like, we could have blown them out. I thought we played with our food the second time around. They really think that they're in the same class with us. This is an opportunity for us to show them right out of the gates, y'all are not like that. And conversely, there are a lot of people that think we're going to take a step back. And if we don't come out and set the tone in week 1, those narratives will start to grow legs. And so this is a big one. We know the threats that the Giants pose. We know about Malik Neighbors, found out about him last year. We know about that defensive line. It's much improved, and they're really talented. Elite even. They've continued to improve the secondary, although I do think the cornerback position is fairly weak. The safety position is one of the better ones in the entire league. They got a really good linebacker core. Their offense, probably better than it was last year. I don't know how much better. I don't think they're a dynamic offense, but they can be dangerous if you do not, if you give them opportunities to force turnovers and things of that nature, shorten the field, they're going to be successful. They're going to be a team that feeds off their defense. I don't think their offense can carry them. We're going to get into the Giants and, what it's going to take to get it done. We're going to talk more about them, go behind enemy lines tomorrow, et cetera, et cetera. But as a first look, this is NFC East family business. This is war. I wouldn't have it any other way out of the gate than playing a divisional foe and setting the tone at the crib. It's a sellout, and we want to make sure that the Giants leave, and we don't just tell them, go, get the hell out. But we'll talk more about that on Thursday and into Friday. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I'm back. Feels good to be back in the saddle. Now, let's gear up for a fun year of football with Commanders Nightly News. I'll see you next time. You guys have a good one. And join me later on tonight when I'll be live for my first edition of Seawall Wednesday with Candy Waller, beat reporter of the Washington Commanders. That'll be later on tonight live. Join me for that. I'll see you then. Take care.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone.